Well then, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another installment here of Unit 3, Biochemistry. Today, what we're going to be talking about is carbon chemistry, or carbon, and its importance inside our bodies. As well as we're also going to be talking about some of the 4 major macromolecules that help make up who you are. Well, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? So, carbon. Carbon atoms have 4 electrons in their outer shell, and that means they can go ahead and form strong covalent bonds. Remember, electrons fill the outer shells. The first layer can have 2, the second layer can have 8. So by going ahead and bonding with other carbon atoms, 4 and 4, we can go ahead and get a very strong bond, where covalent is where the two share. So carbon can also bond to other carbon atoms, making unlimited chains with single, double, or triple bonds. This allows carbon to form millions of different types of molecules. And if you think back, all the way back to, I believe it was the first thing we talked about in biochem, carbon is the most abundant element in organic molecules, or organics to begin with. So carbon makes up most of us. So macromolecules. Macromolecules are giant molecules formed by carbon joining with other carbon atoms and other elements by covalent bonds. Now some macromolecules are polymers. So polymers are formed by the polymerization, or combining, where monomers, smaller units, join to form polymers, larger units via covalent bonds. So mono means one, poly means many. So think of these like Legos, or Lego bricks. Lego bricks by themselves are very small and very simple. However, if you go ahead and combine them in the right order, you can make a wide variety of different things, increasing in size and complexity. So even though you have this amazingly detailed and complex, let's say, castle or something like that, they're all made of individual simple blocks. So that goes to show you, polymers, although impressive and very important, are made up of monomers, or small, simple units. The first type of macromolecule we're going to be talking about today are carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are the body's main source of energy, found in a ratio of 1 to 2 to 1. 1 carbon for every 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen. The monomers, or building blocks, are called monosaccharides. Mono meaning single, saccharide meaning sugar. So a monosaccharide is just a simple sugar, or simple sugar molecule. Some examples include glucose, fructose, and galactose. So glucose, we're talking about simple storage of sugar in the body. Fructose, we're talking about fruit sugar. And we also have galactose. The second type are disaccharides. Di meaning 2. So disaccharides are 2 monosaccharides put together. This includes maltose, lactose, and sucrose. So lactose, milk sugar, maltose, malt sugar, and we also have sucrose. The polymers of this are called polysaccharides. So polysaccharides are 3 or more monosaccharides put together. So disaccharide is 2, polysaccharide is at least 3 or more. Some examples of this include cellulose, which go ahead and store energy in the plants. And we also have glycogen, which stores energy in the animal muscle tissue. So some examples of this, we've got apples, lemons, citrus. So we have some fruit sugar here. We also have our sucrose, glucose. So we have our simple sugars here. And over here we've got our cellulose, which goes ahead and is stored inside of plants. The next type we're going to talk about are lipids. So based off what you can see here, lipids' primary function, these are fats, is to store energy. Lipids are macromolecules. However, they are not polymers. That's right. So lipids don't actually have monomers. The types of lipids that we have include triglycerides, which are found in a solid state, and a liquid state as oil, that contain a glycerol and 3 fatty acid chains. So it's kind of going to look something like this. Kind of looks like a weird looking jellyfish. We have waxes, which are found in beehives and also inside your ear. And we also have sterol or cholesterol, for example, your hormones, which regulate changes inside the body. Now, lipids and fats have a lot of negative connotations. However, there are a huge amount of benefits to these lipids and fats. For example, stored energy. Fats allow us to store energy for an extended amount of time, and we can use that energy later on. Insulation. Think about things like penguins or whales even. They've got a thick layer of blubber or fat that surrounds their body tissue. What this does is it kind of acts like a coat, but on the inside. It helps keep heat in and the cold out. Also, protection. So if you think about where fat normally accumulates, if you think about in humans, it's right here on the stomach. So you got your stomach, the sides. What this does is it protects your organs. So let's say, hypothetically, let's say I got into a fight with somebody, all right? And they went ahead and punched me right in the gut, right in the breadbasket where all the goodies are. Chances are, if they punch hard enough, it could do some serious damage. Now let's go ahead and reverse this situation, and let's go with, let's say a sumo wrestler gets into a fight. And once again, he gets punched in the gut. What does he have that I don't? He's got more protection there, or more layers of fat to go ahead and help cushion the blow. So chances are it would do more damage to myself than it would a sumo wrestler. Also, we have buoyancy. So buoyancy is an individual's ability to float in water. So the more fat you have accumulated, the easier it is to float. My brother always kind of makes fun of me on this one. I can float, but it's about 2 or 3 inches below the surface of the water, so it doesn't really do me any good. I mean, I've tried, like, laying on the back, go ahead, take a deep breath, works for about 2 seconds, then I sink like a rock. So fats, even though they have a negative connotation, they do have benefits. So let's talk a little bit more about fats here. Triglycerides, saturated versus unsaturated. So saturated fatty acids have the maximum numbers of hydrogen atoms used. These are the bad guys. You don't want these. Saturated fats are bad. Whereas unsaturated contain at least one carbon-to-carbon bond and are liquid at room temperature. So saturated fats are solids. Unsaturated are going to be liquids. And polyunsaturated means they have more than one double bond. So what we have here is, if you go ahead and look at this, the structure of a saturated fatty acid, straight up and down. Meanwhile, the unsaturated fatty acid, what we have are these carbon double bonds. And every time we have a carbon double bond, that causes a little kink or twist or turn in the molecule. So I'm going to go ahead and use Tetris to explain this. Now, I know it's a little far out there, but just follow me on this. So we have Tetris. So in Tetris, we have a wide variety of different blocks. The goal is to go ahead and stack up as many as you can to make lines. So think of the board, or the Tetris board, which looks kind of like this, as your body. The saturated fatty acid would be your straight block. Meanwhile, the unsaturated will be those really weird S-shaped blocks. Now, I know it's not the best drawing, but just bear with me. So which of these is going to be easier to stack inside your body? These ones, which is why they're bad for you. Meanwhile, these cannot be stacked upon each other as easily, so it takes longer to fill up. So in short, saturated fatty acid, no good. Unsaturated, these are what you want. Let's go ahead and move on, shall we? So our nucleic acids here. Nucleic acids, once again, are polymers. These polymers are made up of hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, and phosphorus. Sounds kind of familiar, don't you think? That's right, because this makes up, think back to the beginning of the unit, what we call schnapps, or the acronym for the most abundant organic molecules found in organisms. So some examples of nucleic acids include DNA and RNA. So we have DNA over here. Deoxyribonucleic acid, 2 strands in a double helix. The molecules, the function of this, or their molecular function is, it's all about genetics, or genetic information, heredity, and protein synthesis. So your DNA contains the codes of what make you, you. Now the monomers are what we call nucleotides. So our nucleotides are 5 carbon sugars with a phosphate and a nitrogen base. So ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, is a nucleotide that is made up of 3 phosphates and stores energy. So what we have over here is an example of ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. So, as you can see here, it's easily identified by the 3 phosphate chains coming off the side here. So, nucleotides are the building blocks of nucleic acids. If we look up here, this light blue, dark blue, and green, that's actually one nucleotide. So as we continue down here, we can see that DNA is nothing more than a chain of these nucleotides, which we'll venture way more into once we go ahead and get to DNA, RNA, and protein synthesis later on in the year. So, I will see you all on the next slide. So proteins. Proteins are also polymers made of nitrogen, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Now proteins. Proteins are incredibly important for your body. We need these. They're basically what make up you. Monomers. So the monomers or building blocks are called amino acids. There are more than 20 different amino acids in nature. And what we have here is we have a carboxyl group, we have an amino group, we have a hydrogen, a carbon, and we have an R group, which is our variant. So the R group is what's going to determine what type of amino acid it is. Now these amino acids go ahead and combine in specific ways and orders to make different proteins. So the function of proteins are used to control reactions in our body. For example, enzymes. They go ahead and determine how quickly a reaction takes place. They help regulate cell function. They tell the cell what to do, what to make. They also help form bones and muscle, which is incredibly important considering as you grow, your bones and muscle grow with you. They also help fight off disease, so think white blood cells. And they can also be used to transport substances throughout your body, which, once again, is incredibly important. So the protein structure. The structure of proteins are simple ranging to complex. Proteins are joined together by something called peptide bonds. Another word for a protein is actually a polypeptide. So poly meaning many, and peptide being the bond that holds them together. Yep, that looks like a 3-year-old wrote that. But such the joys of writing with a mouse. So there are 3 major shapes of proteins. We have the primary, which is just the sequence of amino acids. So this is going to be relatively simplistic. It's just going to be a straight line. We have the secondary. So secondary include 3-dimensional folds. So these are going to look kind of like these. So imagine you go ahead and take a piece of paper and fold it a bunch until you get those nice accordion-like shapes. That would be a beta-plated sheet. And we also have things called alpha helices, which are pretty much just helixes or spirals. For tertiary, we have globs. So what that is it's all of the secondary shapes interacting with each other. So we could have a sheet going into a helice, going into another sheet, to another helice, into another helice. It's all of these mixing together with each other. Quaternary, on the other hand, is all of these interactions between the globs. So we're talking about this one going ahead and interacting with another one, on top of another one, it can get incredibly complex. So those are our major shapes. Primary, just the sequence. Secondary, three-dimensional folds. Tertiary, we're talking about globs, or the folds interacting with each other. And finally, we have the quaternary, which are the interactions between the globs. Now, yes, this picture below me is the legendary Beyonce. Now, on the left here, what can you tell me about her hair? If you had to go ahead and pick one of these major shapes, what would it be? That's right. This would be our primary. So it's very straight, very simplistic. Meanwhile, if you go ahead and take a look at the one on the right, you can see her hair is a bit different. We've got a wide variety of different curls, different alpha helices. So this would be our tertiary structure. Using Beyonce to teach protein structure. That's just how we do things here. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, this brings us to the end, a rather short unit today, but very pivotal and important. So just as a review, we talked about the four major macromolecules, which are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids, as well as some pointers to go ahead and remember them. Well, that's just about going to do it for us today. So until next time, I will see you in the next video. You all keep it classy.